Welcome to Rugby Rundown, the podcast that breaks down the beautiful chaos of rugby union. I'm Gavin, coming to you from London.
And I'm Adrian, joining from New York. Today we're diving deep into one of the most fascinating stories in world rugby, England's complete and utter domination of the Women's Six Nations, and more importantly, what it's going to take for anyone else to catch up.
Adrian, when we talk about dominance in sport, we usually mean a team that's really good for a few years. But England's Red Roses? This is something entirely different. We're talking about 59 wins from their last 60 test matches. That's not dominance. That's approaching video game levels of superiority.
Gavin, those numbers are absolutely staggering. 21 Six Nations titles, an average winning margin of 39 points. That means they're not just winning, they're obliterating teams by 6 tries on average. And here's the kicker. They're so far ahead that they literally cannot gain ranking points when playing at home unless they're facing one of the other top 4 nations away from home. The gap is bigger than what we see in men's rugby between the All Blacks and Argentina.
Right. And that's what makes this so intriguing from an analytical perspective. This isn't just about having better players. This is about having built a completely different system. When I was researching this episode, I kept coming back to one pivotal moment, 2019. When the RFU made the decision to award 28 full-time professional contracts. That was the moment everything changed.
That's the first mover advantage we keep hearing about, right? While other unions were still treating women's rugby as a part-time pursuit, England went full professional. But here's what's fascinating. It wasn't just about the money. It was about time. Suddenly, England's players had dedicated, paid time for training, strength and conditioning, skills development, tactical analysis, and crucially, recovery. Their competitors were still juggling day jobs.
Exactly. And think about the compounding effect. In elite sport, a single year of full-time structured training yields significant advantages. England had a 3 to 5 year head start on their rivals. That's not just thousands of extra training hours. That's cultivating a professional mindset, embedding complex game plans, developing a deep-seated high-performance culture. The record-breaking 58,498 attendance at Twickenham for the 2023 Six Nations decider against France? That's the dividend of that early investment.
Now, professionalism is just the first pillar of England's success. The second is something I find absolutely genius from a strategic standpoint, the Premiership Women's Rugby League, or PWR. Gavin, this isn't just a domestic competition. This is a talent magnet that's actually strengthening England while weakening their competitors.
It's brilliant, isn't it? The PWR is arguably the world's most competitive professional women's rugby competition. But here's the really clever bit. Top international players from Scotland, Wales, Italy, and even world number 2 Canada actively seek contracts with PWR clubs. So England gets the dual benefit of elevating their own league's quality while centralizing and influencing the development of their rivals' best talent.
That's incredible strategic thinking. England's coaching setup gets unparalleled insight into their opponents because they're literally coaching against these players week in and week out in the PWR. Meanwhile, it can inadvertently weaken the domestic structures of other nations. It's like England created a system that develops their players to the highest standard while also giving them intelligence on everyone else's game plans.
The third pillar is the RFU's systematic approach to investment. We're not talking about throwing money at the senior team and hoping for the best. This is the Impact 25 program, over £14.5 million in government and lottery funding strategically distributed across facilities, coaching, community development, the works. The goal? Growing female participation from 40,000 players in 2022 to 100,000 by 2027.
That's the long-term thinking that separates professional organizations from amateur ones. They're not just building a team, they're building an ecosystem. And it's already showing results. 37,000 women and girls reached, 500 clubs and schools supported, 35% increase in registered age-grade girls. That creates a conveyor belt of talent that feeds the PWR and ultimately the Red Roses.
Which brings us to the fourth pillar, the player pathway. England has created this meticulously structured system from playground to Twickenham, starting at U12, moving through U14, U16, and U18 levels with a national curriculum ensuring consistency across the country. The foundation phase focuses on core athletic abilities. Then the development phase prepares players for professional rugby. It's systematic production of elite talent.
The impact of this systematic approach is visible in England's tactical evolution too. When you watch their games, you're seeing players who've been drilled in the same systems from age 12 onwards. The offloading game, the line speed and defense, the set-piece precision. These aren't skills developed at senior level, they're the culmination of years of consistent, progressive coaching using the same tactical language.
And the numbers back this up in fascinating ways. England's fitness levels are measurably superior. Their tackle completion rates consistently exceed 90%. Their ruck speed is significantly faster than their opponents, and their scrum success rate is above 95%. But perhaps most telling is their ability to maintain intensity for the full 80 minutes. In the 2024 Six Nations, they outscored opponents 147-25 in the final 20 minutes of matches. That's not just skill. That's superior conditioning and mental resilience built through professional training.
There's also a psychological dimension we shouldn't underestimate. When teams take the field against England, they're not just facing superior players, they're confronting the weight of that 59 from 60 record. That creates a mental hurdle before the first whistle even blows. It's like facing the All Blacks at their peak, where opponents often seemed beaten before kickoff. England has cultivated that same aura of invincibility in women's rugby. Okay, so we've established that England built something special. But let's talk about the challengers, because this is where it gets really interesting. France stands out as the most likely to break through, right? They've got everything. Large player base, strong domestic competition in the Elite One Feminine, massive public support with millions of TV viewers.
Absolutely. France is the classic case of having all the ingredients but missing one crucial element: full-time centralized professionalism. They're still largely semi-professional, which means their players are balancing elite rugby with careers or studies. That creates a deficit in collective preparation time and the deep tactical integration that England enjoys. If France commits to full professionalism in the next 12 to 18 months, they could achieve competitive parity within 3 to 5 years.
Now, Ireland presents a fascinating case study. They're at the beginning of their professional journey with 37 centralized contracts introduced in 2022, but the reported pay scale of 15,000 to 30,000 euros suggests many players still can't be full-time athletes. However, they've already climbed 5 places in world rankings in a single year, showing the immediate impact of increased investment.
Scotland's story is actually quite heartbreaking. They achieved their first Rugby World Cup quarterfinal since 2002, proving they can compete. But there's been a major contract dispute post-World Cup with reports that half the World Cup squad might be left without professional deals. This instability has already contributed to key player retirements. It's strategic suicide to dismantle progress when you've finally shown you can compete.
Wales presents an interesting experiment. They've made substantial financial commitments with 37 full-time professional contracts, reportedly making them one of the best-paid international teams in the world. But investment doesn't automatically equal results. They finished with the wooden spoon in 2024 and suffered heavy World Cup defeats. It shows that professional contracts are necessary but not sufficient. You need the whole ecosystem.
Italy's at the earliest stage with 25 semi-professional contracts introduced in 2022. But here's where it gets interesting. They have a valuable blueprint in the recent success of their men's team. The Italian men went from perennial wooden spoon recipients to highly competitive, and it was built on sustained investment in their U20s program. That could be the most efficient pathway for the Azure too.
What's particularly interesting about Italy's position is that they're actually the most analytically driven of the emerging nations. Their coaching staff has been systematically studying England's model, from their strength and conditioning protocols to their tactical periodization. They've identified that England's forward pack averages 15% more time in contact training per week than their opponents, which directly correlates to their superiority at the breakdown. That Italian men's renaissance is such a perfect case study. For years, they were finishing 3rd in the U26 nations, 7th in the U20 World Championships, and now those players form the backbone of the senior side that's beating Wales and Scotland. It demonstrates that a focused investment in a national U20s program is a direct pathway to senior competitiveness.
Let's talk about some global lessons. New Zealand's approach is fascinating. Their 10-year women and girls in rugby system strategy isn't just about high performance, it's culturally embedded, prioritizing participant-centered design, integrating Maori culture, targeting 40% female representation in governance. They understand that enduring success requires investing in the entire ecosystem.
And then there's Canada's strategic pragmatism, which I think offers the most actionable blueprint for the Six Nations challengers. Canada is world number 2 despite lacking a domestic professional league and operating on a fraction of England's budget. Their secret? Leveraging overseas leagues for player development while concentrating domestic resources on age-grade programs. It's about being smart with limited resources.
It's worth noting that Australia and the United States are also implementing versions of this strategic approach. Australia's Wallaroos have introduced 15 full-time contracts and are leveraging their domestic Super W competition more effectively. The U.S. has the advantage of a massive collegiate system feeding into their Olympic Sevens program. Both nations could emerge as significant challengers by 2027, especially with the Women's Rugby World Cup being held in England. The ultimate test of whether anyone can challenge the Red Roses on home soil. So, what's the roadmap for closing the gap? For the Celtic nations in Italy, it's a multi-pronged approach. First, stabilize and grow professionalism, secure long-term funding and expand contracted player numbers. Second, and this is crucial, supercharge the U20s pathway. Make those national programs fully professional, year-round entities.
Third, strengthen domestic competition. The Celtic Challenge needs strategic investment to become a robust semi-professional standard with broadcast partners. Fourth, embrace pragmatism. Encourage top players to gain experience in England's PWR or France's Elite One while domestic structures develop. It's the Canadian model applied to European rugby.
The timelines are realistic but require patience. France, with full commitment to professionalism, could achieve parity in 3 to 5 years. For the others, assuming sustained investment across all 4 pillars, we're looking at 5 to 8 years for a credible challenger to emerge. A team capable of consistently competing for top 2 finishes.
The key indicator we should watch for is when a challenger nation can consistently keep England's winning margin below 20 points. That would signal they've achieved professional parity in conditioning and tactics. The next milestone would be winning the territorial and possession battle. England typically dominates with 60 to 65% territory and possession. When someone can flip those numbers, or even achieve 50-50 parity, that's when we'll know the gap is truly closing. What strikes me most about this analysis is that England's dominance isn't some mysterious phenomenon. It's the predictable outcome of strategic, systematic, well-funded advantages built over several years. The blueprint exists. Other nations just need the institutional will and financial commitment to execute it.
Exactly. And that's what makes this story so compelling. This isn't about England having some inherent advantage. It's about them recognizing the opportunity earlier and committing fully. The competitive gap is real, but it's not insurmountable. It just requires the same level of strategic thinking and long-term investment that England demonstrated.
That's all for today's deep dive into England's Women's Six Nations dominance and the roadmap for closing the gap. Thanks for joining us on Rugby Rundown. I'm Adrian.
And I'm Gavin. Make sure to subscribe for more rugby analysis, and we'll see you next time when we break down the beautiful chaos of rugby union. Until then, keep your head up in the rucks.